So I thought I'd pop in really quick with the simplest of simple. What is therapy? Because people are afraid of that word. It's a scary word. Because people, I don't need therapy. I don't need to go tell some stranger all my problems. What are they going to do for me? Well, you don't know until you go. And sometimes it's easier to talk to a stranger about things than it is to talk to your family and or friends. Because sometimes there's some stuff you just don't want them to know. And sometimes there's just some things they've already heard and they've already given you all their advice. And it's not helped. So sometimes you can go and talk to a therapist. A therapist is different than a psychiatrist. A psychiatrist is a medical doctor that can diagnose and prescribe medication. A therapist, marriage and family therapy, a licensed professional clinical counselor, or whatever they call them in your state, cannot diagnose or cannot prescribe medication. Like I can't prescribe medication, but I can diagnose and say, oh, well, this sounds like something that you might have. Go talk to a psychiatrist or a medical doctor to get a prescription for it or whatever. I don't usually do that, but I can recommend that they do that. So, therapy. Think of it as not a scary thing. Think of it as life skills. Think of it as learning coping skills, relational skills, if you have trouble relating to people. I mean, we've all seen those, those seminars that they do, pay $50 and come and listen for 2 hours to this person tell you how to get along with difficult people. Well, that's basically, in a nutshell, kind of like therapy, except during something like that, they're extolling this, they're telling you all about this, they're giving you advice and stuff, so you're not really having any input. But in therapy, it's your game. It's your ball game. You come, you drive the train. The therapist is just there to kind of do the switches on the train tracks, right? So you are the one who comes to therapy with an issue, or maybe you don't really have a specific issue, but you just feel a little off. You don't really know. Maybe it's grief, maybe it's anger, maybe it's relationship problems, maybe it's somebody said I had this or whatever, so I thought I'd come. Sometimes it's a mandated thing. So maybe you get in trouble and they say, okay, you have to go to therapy because it's part of your, penance or whatever it is that the law says. So therapy is not a bad thing. You call a therapist, you call your doctor or whoever, and you go to a therapist, and the first session, the therapist will go through informed consent, which is basically going through all the legal paperwork that applies, and it's basically giving you the rundown of confidentiality and all the things that apply for that particular state, because I'm in California, and so California has their own rules and regulations. So I talked about confidentiality once before, about how it's everything that, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. So I can't go out and tell people what we talked about unless I hear of any kind of physical abuse or emotional abuse or something like that, some kind of abuse of a child, an elder, or a dependent adult. Or if I hear of you going to hurt yourself or someone else, then I have to tell somebody, but otherwise, generally speaking, I don't have to. There is a little kind of clause in there. If I get subpoenaed, then I would have to comply with that subpoena, but it rarely happens. I've never had it happen. So that's that part. So you don't have to worry about the therapist running out and talking to everybody. Hey, guess what I heard? It doesn't work that way. So, then you get there for your first session, you go through all the paperwork, and then the therapist starts asking questions. So tell me about yourself. Tell me about what the deal is. What brings you here today, kind of thing. So you start with whatever. Sometimes the therapist has a tendency to go back to things that happened maybe in childhood that might have set the foundation for whatever the issue is now. Anxiety or depression or PTSD or whatever the case may be. Maybe it's a solution-focused thing. Maybe you just come in and it's like, I can't decide whether or not to divorce my husband or my wife or my whoever. So I was just trying to work this out. So if you just need like a solution-focused kind of a thing, that's fine too. Come on in. We can help you work through the stuff, kind of bouncing ideas off, somebody else who's not involved in the situation. Because a lot of times, especially for something like that, like if you're thinking about leaving but you don't really know, or if you're thinking about getting married but you don't really know, bouncing it off of people that you know, they're always going to have input. Oh, no, you should really leave the guy. Or, oh, no, you should definitely marry that one. But if you go and talk to somebody that's a third party who's not involved in the situation, sometimes that's a better way to figure out what you really want to do. A therapist is not, or should not, be giving advice. I mean, suggestions, recommendations of things to try or things to do or whatever. It's like, okay, this is your homework. Go home and, do journal writing or whatever like that to work out pros and cons lists and things like that. But a therapist isn't or should not be saying, you need to go home and you need to do this, this, and this, and come back next week and tell me exactly what you did and why you didn't do it the way I told you to do it. Because that's not what a therapist should be doing. Because when anybody gives advice like that, especially a therapist, they're taking the responsibility for that to work. And if it doesn't work, they also need to take responsibility for it not working. And that's not always the best way to do it. And therapists aren't supposed to be doing that. I need to go to a therapist so they can tell me what to do. No, you can go to a therapist and you can say, I got this problem. It's like, well, what do you think your options are? Well, is this option better than that option? How about this option or that option? Have you thought about maybe this option or that option? That kind of thing. It's throwing out ideas, but not saying, well, you definitely need to do this one. That's not what therapy is. Some people think it is. And another thing therapy is not lifelong. It can be for some people. They just get into this place where they feel like they want to go all the time, or they need to go work out issues. A lot of people will go for an acute issue, and they'll go for, months or years or whatever until that works out. And then they'll just check back in occasionally. Like they'll go in for a once a month tune-up or a once a quarter tune-up or once a year or whatever. They'll just go back for like a tune-up, which is fine. Some people go for whatever it is till the issue is resolved, and then you never see them again. So it's not like a lifelong thing. It's not going and laying on a therapist's couch with some guy in a white coat saying, tell me about your childhood. That's all Freudian kind of ideas that we got from all the movies that we've seen, but that's not what therapy is. And therapy is not Frasier. I love Frasier. I just love Frasier. But it's not that either, although there are a lot of good psychological therapeutic facts in that show, believe it or not. So that's what therapy is and isn't. At least, it's some places take insurance and some places don't take insurance. Some places have sliding scales. Some places will work with you if you don't think you have the money to pay. They'll say, well, our regular fee is this, but based on your income, we can do it at this, or whatever the case may be. Some places like Sacramento County and other counties in California have what do they call it? Community kind of programs. Like down in Sacramento County, it's called hearyou.org, and you can get 6 free counseling sessions. Anywhere else in the state, any other county in the state, it's $85 a session through that program. And, talk to your county. Sometimes county mental health, you can get some free sessions based on your income or your need. And again, it's not a psychiatrist. It's not a medical doctor, just therapy. A psychiatrist, by the way, doesn't really do therapy. They don't do the talk therapy part. They don't work through the problems, generally speaking. Some do, but generally speaking, they'll see you for 15 minutes, a half an hour, whatever, to diagnose you and figure out what your issues are, ask some questions and say, okay, that sounds like this. Here's some medication. Go talk to a therapist. And the therapist is the one who does the talk therapy or the whatever kind of therapy that you happen to need. I say that because there's other things that a therapist can do if they're trained in it. They have to be trained in it before they go just doing things. And one of them is like EMDR, which is an eye desensitization. It has to do with eye movement and processing somatic stuff, which is all of the feelings instead of the words. There's also Brainspotting. I do Brainspotting. Brainspotting is an offshoot of EMDR, and it has to do with eye movement and pinpointing areas, and you kind of focus on an area and feel the feelings that come up in that area for whatever it is. So you don't have to figure out why. Why doesn't matter. It's the feeling, to process through those feelings, because all of those things we go through in life, the feelings, unless they've been, worked through, all those feelings get kind of locked inside of our amygdala, and different areas. And so we carry that around in our bodies. And so sometimes we go around, I mean, we talked about shame and guilt a while back, and shame actually causes the inflammatory markers to elevate in people where guilt does not. Because shame is an internal, I'm a bad person thing. Guilt is not that way. Guilt is, I did a bad thing, now I need to fix it or apologize for it. So it's the same with the, whatever I was just talking about. No, it's the same with the internal stuff that we remember and don't process through, and the somatic stuff that we have to work through emotionally instead of just yapping. So anyway, that's just a quick little nutshell version of what therapy is and what therapy isn't. And don't be afraid of it. It's not something to be afraid of. And if you really want to know or really want to check it out, talk to somebody in the profession or ask somebody who's been. Sometimes churches have like pastoral counseling and people go, well, I don't want to be preached at. That's not what I'm talking about. Pastoral counseling can be something more along the lines of therapy with a Christian focus, like it's got, they incorporate more spiritual stuff instead of just strictly, therapeutic medical stuff. So sometimes you could start there. Start with a support group and then you work your way into therapy if you're afraid of therapy, or if you just don't want to go, or if you don't have the money to go. That's why I say there's places that you can research that offer sliding scale, low cost or no cost, depending on, some places get grants. If you go through some kind of experience like a fire, wildfire or something, sometimes places will have grants that you can apply for at that place and say, I experienced this thing and this place is offering X number of sessions because I went through this thing for free, so there's ways if you really want to do it. And as a side note, a life coach is not a therapist. They can help you work out some of the same problems, like a solution thing, should I get divorced or not get divorced or whatever. They can help you work through some of the stuff, but they cannot do therapy. Life coaches cannot do therapy. So keep that in mind if you choose to do the life coach thing. They should not be doing therapy. So that's it. There's a little nutshell of what therapy is and what therapy isn't. If you have questions, leave them below and we can work this out, and or ask somebody that you know that's been in therapy or gone to a therapist, or ask your doctor. Just check it out online even. So yeah, it's not anything to be afraid of. So on that note, I will, oh, there's a squirrely. I will check out for now, and I'll talk to you later.